Hello and welcome to Maximum Disc, a show where I celebrate physical media and talk about films that I own on Blu Ray and 4K Blu Ray. I'm James Adamson, I'm a co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. If you like this chat about physical media, please do check out Double Reel. It's a magazine-style podcast made by people who love films as much as you do. We talk about various films and topics and reckon that if you tune into any one of our episodes, you'll come away with a bunch of great recommendations of things to watch instead of just doing what the algorithm tells you. Now, physical media, why does it matter? We talk about it because we think it's important to own a film physically if you really care about it. The streamers might not have it at all. They might not have it in the version that really counts, the director's cut, the special edition, the proper version that really makes it work as a film. And it certainly won't look and sound as good as it will on like the absolute top of the line disc. So the really important films are the ones you need to own and have on your shelf. Each episode I talk about one such film that I've decided to buy and own for myself and talk you through what I think of it, how it sounds and how it looks. That's what everyone really wants to know, isn't it? But also my relationship with the film overall, my history with it, why I came to, want to own it and all of those things. And at the end, try and give you a view on whether I think it's an essential purchase or at least try and help you make your mind up about that. So today I'm going to be talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind on 4K Blu Ray. Directed, of course, by the great Steven Spielberg in 1977, only his third feature film as a director, if you don't count Duel, which was originally a TV movie. He's also the sole credited writer, which is unusual for a Spielberg film. If you look on IMDb, there are 4 other people listed as having contributed to the script without meriting a writing credit: Hal Barwood, Jerry Belson, John Hill and Matthew Robbins, who will have contributed material and story credit and so on. It stars Richard Dreyfuss in the traditional Spielbergian everyman role as a man who starts to lose his grip on his family and his mind and his whole life when he starts seeing UFOs in the sky above him in Indiana, and also getting some kind of subliminal message from them about where they are and what they're doing here on Earth. It's not a very starry cast apart from him, although there are lots of names and faces you'll recognise if you were around at the time, like Terry Garr, Melinda Dillon, French director Francois Truffaut in a rare acting role, Bob Balaban, and early cameos really for Lance Henriksen and Carl Weathers. That's the bloke from all the James Cameron films and Apollo Creed to you. Director and star, both fresh from the success of their previous film Jaws, you might have heard of it. Cinematography for the films by the legendary Vilmos Zsigmond, who had a long distinguished career as a director of photography, working particularly with a lot of the big names of this 70s era. Other than Spielberg, that was people like Robert Altman, Brian De Palma and Michael Cimino. Of the large team that worked on the sound, the leading members credited on awards nominations were Robert Knudsen, Frank Warner, Robert Glass, Don McDougall and Gene S. Cantamessa. There is, of course, the score to mention here, as music plays a key role in this film, both in the atmosphere and style, but also in the story. And you'll be shocked to hear that the composer of the score for this Steven Spielberg film was one John Williams. Lots of nominations for awards here for this film because it was so successful and well received when it came out. It got 9 Oscar nominations for a start, including lots of technical nominations. Best Director nomination for Spielberg and Melinda Dillon for Supporting Actress. It won only 2 Oscars, Best Cinematography for Zsigmond, and Frank Warner won a special award for sound effects editing. The sound generally is a category, is one of those parts of the Oscars that's changed over time as to what awards it gets. It wasn't nominated at all for Best Picture, and John Williams was only nominated for his score, didn't win. He lost out to some minor obscure nominee that year, I think. John Williams for Star Wars. So a good year for him. In terms of what the film's about, I think most people know that. Close Encounters of the Third Kind has become kind of a phrase in itself. Apart from that brief summary of Richard Dreyfuss's role as the person who starts to see UFOs, the idea is that UFOs are starting to appear all around the world. You start to see this team, this international team appearing in the desert and India and all different places, sometimes with UN jeeps. So it's a big global effort to work out what's going on with this strange phenomena. But we kind of focus particularly on their appearances in the skies above Indiana in Midwestern USA. People react in a range of ways to seeing these sights, from frightened and disturbed to intrigued and excited. These UFO sightings become more and more frequent and intense, and it seems pretty clear it's aliens. Some people, including Richard Dreyfuss, become so obsessed with the UFOs they start searching the area for signs of the places that they've been seeing in their heads of where the aliens might be. It's like someone sending them a message directly into their brains. When they get to that place, they find a huge organisation, seemingly government and other experts, who've sealed off an area devoted to trying to make contact with these aliens. So obviously a very famous and iconic film that kind of wrote the book on how we perceive stories of aliens coming to Earth. It obviously builds on stories of Area 51 and all the UFO films of the 50s. Spielberg, like George Lucas, is one of those people who does like to recreate things that were a big deal for him when he was younger, and the 50s UFO thing was a major, I think, theme in America, especially in the 1950s when he was growing up. My background with the film is, growing up, I didn't have much connection to the film at all. When I was little, I guess I was dependent a little bit on what, my parents were putting on the telly or taking us to see. And they weren't fans of this, so they didn't show it to me, unlike Jaws and Indiana Jones and some other Spielberg films that I did get to see. And I've never been hugely into the whole kind of UFOs, aliens are among us phenomenon, so I didn't try too hard to seek it out for myself. So by the time I'm going out and watching films, it's been and gone. It's the 80s, and there are other films coming out on video and at the cinema. So I'd heard about it and seen clips, but for a long time I hadn't seen it at all. Eventually did see it on TV, an old square TV with a smallish screen compared to these days, and I thought it was fine. In recent years, I got more curious about it. I listened to a podcast by people who were huge fans of it, who talked through what they thought was so great about this film. That kind of got me hooked. And then it was being shown on TV, more recently, when you've got a big TV at home and a good sound system. So I got to watch it more like it was intended at the cinema. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. So I looked out for the 4K Blu Ray as I started to build my collection. And when it became part of one of those online offers, 2 for X pounds, I grabbed hold of it and then proceeded to kind of watch it and think about it and prepare to talk about it for this show. Okay, so now let's talk about the disc itself. It's kind of the standard 4K disc that you can buy. It's not a steelbook or a special collector's edition. It's 3 discs, which contains a 4K disc with all 3 versions of the film, a Blu Ray disc with all 3 versions of the film, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then a Blu Ray disc with all the special features, and there's lots of them. There's a special featurette done for this release of the Blu Ray, 4K Blu Ray. There's a short thing called Spielberg's Home Videos. There's a making of, an interview with Spielberg about the film, a contemporary featurette that came out in 1977, Watch the Skies, deleted scenes, trailers, photo gallery, storyboard comparisons of the different versions of the film. So it's very well stocked. In terms of the versions, this is sort of tied to the history of the film a little bit. It came out in 1977, was a massive, massive hit. Spielberg and Lucas were kind of credited with inventing the modern blockbuster. I mean, there had been blockbusters before. The disaster movies of the early 70s already come around and were very much seen as being the big, what we would call a tentpole movie today. But Spielberg revolutionized things with Jaws. Then along came Lucas with Star Wars and Spielberg with this. And the appetite for more of this was kind of endless. And in 1980, Spielberg was persuaded to do a special edition which was re-released in the cinemas, even more of the film that you like, which is kind of early for these kind of special extended editions to be shown and reshown. It's only 3 years after the film came out, but it was that much of a big hit. Now, Spielberg feels like he had his arm twisted a bit to show more than he had actually originally wanted to of the inside of the ship and the aliens. And looking back, I don't think he liked that, but the special edition came out. I think home video editions, there were a lot of, versions of that came out with the special edition. Later, I think for the DVD era, Spielberg did a proper director's cut in which he merged his favourite things from both versions. The stuff that he would have put in if he had a bit more time in 1977, but cutting out some of the things for the special edition that he hadn't wanted to leave in there. Now, I think the theatrical cut is fine. It's probably as good as anything, but I can't resist a director's cut. You get a bit more time with the characters, so I do like that. It's generally advised to avoid the special edition, and I agree. That additional footage inside the alien ship doesn't work. It's far better to have a bit more mystery. I mean, you see the aliens a little bit at the end of the film anyway, and you don't want to see any more than that, to be quietly honest. So I watched the director's cut for this, but I think the director's cut is broadly consistent with the theatrical cut. Either of those is a very good version of this film. So let's talk about the video. In a word, it's absolutely belting. I would say I might have had a bit of a mental block about this film generally and about stuff from the 70s in that, I don't know, Jaws doesn't seem to have the same thing to it, although when you do watch Jaws, you go, oh, look at all those 70s haircuts and, it very much, you can tell it's from the mid-70s. This is somehow even more so. There's lots of, hairy sideburns, flared trousers, beige cars. I'm not sure if I sort of automatically associate that in my mind with good visuals. I think I'm a little bit too tired to go 1980s Michael Mann making everything shiny, and that's probably not fair because this does look really, really, really good. Spielberg is giving us 35mm Panavision, which we've talked about before. That's what the Right Stuff, which I reviewed before, was shot in. That's what John Carpenter preferred to use. He did the optical effects in 70mm, which means the size of the screen is the same as Panavision, because what they do with Panavision is they shoot it in 35 and then blow it up to 70. And what that means is the optical effects could be in like really good detail, but then match the rest of the film. The optical effects are pre-CGI. You don't get that back then, kids. So it all had to be in camera, and you needed to have someone like Douglas Trumbull, who does an incredible job with the special effects here. And he's also known for things like 2001 and Blade Runner. So the best of the best are working on the quality of the picture here. In 4K, it's incredibly vivid. You've got scenes of the Jeeps coming over the dunes in the desert with the sky, this amazing colour of blue. It's kept enough grain to remind you that this is a film. There's always this discussion about how much grain. There's been talk of the James Cameron 4Ks where he's gone and got a computer and brushed all the grain off, and that's been very controversial. There's always a talk about how much grain you want to have. And funnily enough, the opening scene of this film is in a sandstorm. So for a moment you're thinking, oh, bloody hell, that really is a lot of grain. But then the scene clears and it really is quite spectacular. It's probably fair to note that previous home viewing options have been probably bad, or poor isn't quite the word, but I don't think it's adequate to this film. When it was shown on TV and cut to look square, VHS and early DVDs didn't necessarily do it justice. And this is one of the films that really depends on a big screen, visually strong experience to really get the full experience of this film. So that the better our home viewing formats get, the better the experience is watching Close Encounters. But you've got stuff like the lights appearing over Richard Dreyfuss's pickup truck, the sunburn that he and other people get when they get too exposed to those lights, the ship suddenly appearing and blowing everyone's minds, later on when the mothership comes down and the lights and everything else. And there's always a risk that these special effects could look a bit dated now, but it really holds up well. This is a top quality reproduction from the original negative. It's really top quality. And it really does get across how spectacular this must have looked to people that they went to see it at the cinema, fresh and never having seen anything else in 1977. It's got some great scenes of the ship appearing. There's an early scene when you see the size of the ship sort of floating over Richard Dreyfuss's head, and then the scenes of the mothership at the end where it's a really impressive spaceship. The other kind of famous films for like that, wowing you, awesome visuals of a spaceship appearing is obviously the never-ending sight of the ship in Alien that just keeps going on forever and ever as the opening shot watches it sort of sail past. Similar one in Star Wars when the little spaceship with Princess Leia on it appears, and behind it you see this enormous starship that's blocking out the sun. So you've got a lot of this really powerful visual, and I guess the selling point for this is that this isn't in a galaxy far, far away. This is the film that's meant to make you feel like, wow, what if this was in a sky above us and you could see it from out of your window? And it really does have that Spielbergian sense of wonder. This is probably one of the best films for that sense of awe and excitement that Spielberg's always wanted to get. So the video really does get that across here. The sound lives up to it as well. I mean, they haven't gone to like a 7.1 mix or Dolby Atmos. Spielberg keeping it old school. It's DTS 5.1, so you do get surround sound. And it's absolutely tremendous. So there are obviously key moments. The bass has to rumble when the mothership starts playing that melody. It's a famous scene at the end when they're trying to communicate musically with the ship and it's blowing out the windows. That's absolutely as good as it gets. Overall, the sound is always pin sharp. You've got some really nice surround sound when the helicopters are chasing people down. So it's just got everything that you need, from the moments of silence broken by the door starting to shake, all the atmosphere. It's really, really very, very good. It's just top quality. I mean, overall, I don't know why I always had a mental block about this one. I think it's just a case of this whole alien invasion thing just hasn't been for me. I never was really massively into the X-Files. I did feel that the truth is out there. While that show and this film are not sort of intended to kind of build conspiracy theories, it just felt like it played into that, everything is aliens are here, the government's covering things up. That general atmosphere doesn't appeal to me. But you've got to remember that Spielberg is one of the good guys. He is a decent and responsible filmmaker, and he wouldn't make that kind of film. And what he's talking about here is, for example, the government cover-up, so to speak, is probably the most benevolent government cover-up that you've ever seen in a 1970s film. I mean, they put the cows to sleep, so they lie down and then wake up 6 hours later, so it looks like there's been a problem. And when Richard Dreyfuss breaks through the cordon and is captured by the government, they basically give him a cup of tea and ask him if he'd like to join in. So it's really about against that sense of wonder and awe at seeing this, and Spielberg's feeling, and I think, this is obviously a young man's film. He's talked about that if he'd made that after he had kids, he'd never have a central character that abandoned his family to go to space. But I think he still has that feeling of, what if the unknown isn't something to be afraid of? What if the unknown is an opportunity that we should grab with both hands? And that feeling of optimism and wonder, it's really refreshing, actually. And this is a PG-rated film that doesn't rely on blood and guts to get its atmosphere. And look, I'm not afraid of blood and guts for a film to make its impact, but this is very wholesome, good quality entertainment. It really, really does the job. Is it an essential purchase? I mean, the only hesitation I've had, as I talked about, is it's not naturally my favourite subject. But in terms of the quality and filmmaking on display in the disc, it's an absolute no-brainer. I probably have this one thing with this film, and that is that I love doing the podcast that I do, and I love doing these shows. It's a bit of a calling for me. I really enjoy doing it. But it does have a downside that when you start watching a film to talk about it on here, you kind of jump immediately to what you're going to say about it and what you think about it, instead of just getting on and enjoying it. So what I probably need to do, because I haven't lived with this film all my life like I have with Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark, is I probably need to go back and watch it again and go, look, I've done the job, I've done the talking. Now I'm just going to sit back and enjoy a great movie, which is what Spielberg always wants you to do. And it's definitely a very, very rewatchable film. So yes, absolutely an essential purchase. And, look, if you ask me a year or two from now what I think of it, I'll probably forget all the stuff about, what did I think of the technical detail, and I'll just think, what a great story, what a great atmosphere, Richard Dreyfuss on top form, Spielberg changing the world. So yes, absolutely, this is a terrific film. So that's what I think about Close Encounters. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps you make your mind up about buying it. And obviously I hope this helps you kind of, encourage you to build your own physical media collection, because it is the future. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Once again, if you enjoyed the show, please do check out Double Reel, our podcast. Ways to find that podcast and our socials will be on the screen in a moment. And I hope to see you next time for more physical media chat right here on Maximum Disc. The Maximum Disc YouTube channel is brought to you by Double Reel, the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. If you like our celebration of physical media, please check out the podcast for more chat about the films we love and hate.